This is absolutely fantastic. Hi, I'm Don Famularo. I'm here at the Mapex Facebook page, and this is so exciting to have this opportunity. With this crazy pandemic, it's allowed us to now connect with artists that are home, where normally they would be traveling. And last week I had the wonderful Russ Miller. I had a chance to talk to him, and this week I'm excited to have with me Rashid Williams. Rashid, thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
This is great. Listen, it's great to have you here. We're in a very challenging time, Rashid, in the music industry and, as it affects the world. So tell me how you're kind of just dealing with being home now with your wife in your studio. What's happening?
Man, I tell you what, there's two very important words that I've been living by since all this started. And it's adaptation and maximization. Those words I've been adapting because, we're used to 2 days at home and then jump on a flight. And this is new. Being home for this long, this consistent, it's so new. But man, I tell you what, I've been practicing my recipes and spending a lot of time in the studio.
That is great. Now, are you entertaining yourself? Are you listening to any more music that you normally wouldn't listen to? Are you keeping active that way?
Yeah, I'm musically revisiting a lot of the stuff that I have gotten away from, man, because, like when you're out on a gig, you don't really get to listen to all the stuff that, just inspires you. You're listening to the artist that you're playing for. And, once in a while you might just veer off, but really revisiting a lot of the things that a lot of those records, man, that got me started and really feeling good about music. And then puzzles are also a thing that is very popular in my house right now. We enjoy doing puzzles, so it's been a very, like I said, adaptation, man. We've been adapting, and got to be inspired somehow. So pull out some of those old records. I mean, actual vinyl. Like pull out some of those old records and listen, man. Listen to the Elvin Joneses and the Tony Williamses, and let these guys bring us back to an inspired place.
Boy, that is beautiful. That's beautiful that you're doing that. Boy, tell me, you kind of grew up in the church scene, playing church music. Of course, influenced by your parents.
Yeah.
What drummers inspired you in the early days?
Early days, man. Two major inspirations. That was Little John Roberts and Brian Fraser Moore.
Nice.
Major inspirations. One, because they were from Philly, where they are from Philly, and I grew up in South Jersey, so. Those guys were the guys that you commonly would hear about. You know what I'm saying? No matter where you go, they're like, yo, but if you don't know them, you don't know nobody.
Yeah.
Early days was them, man. Like I always say, watching Little John on Velvet Rope Tour with Janet Jackson was actually the video that made me say, I want to play drums as a live drummer, as a live musician. And that was a major point. And then hearing Brian Fraser Moore play with Usher, man, live in Chattanooga, that recording is, to me, one of the greatest displays of R&B playing.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know, I found out maybe a year or two ago, is that Usher was opening for Janet on that tour.
Interesting.
So, man, those guys will have to be like the top two, like as a young 12, 13-year-old, me coming up. Like just really getting into it, they were my heaviest inspirations.
Well, that's really beautiful, because I had a chance to perform an event at Casio Music in Wisconsin, which is a phenomenal store, and with Brian. And he's just first of all, he's just such a nice guy.
He's a great guy, man.
And he's just a very dedicated artist, man. He still pushes himself, and he still wants to learn, and he's still a very, very, actively involved in the forward motion of understanding and learning this craft.
100%. And he's not afraid to help the younger guys and really pass on his knowledge, man. And I think any guy like that's older than me and that has been willing to give these little nuggets of information, I think it's just incredible. And he's one of them. I actually spoke to him yesterday. Yesterday was his birthday. So shout out Brian Fraser Moore. Happy birthday again. But yeah, I spoke to him yesterday. He called me, man. And it's funny because we spent maybe about 20 minutes on the phone laughing and joking and just I don't think we talked about drums once. we just got on the phone and he was calling me because I texted him and he called me back and he's like, yo, man, we just started chatting it up and it was just all laughs and it was crazy, man. So yeah, he's great.
Beautiful. Well, again, A great guy, even Little John, man. These guys are seriously,
Yeah.
good people, and that's a big part. I think. Listen, drummers are like that too. Drummers, more than any other instrument that I know of,
Yeah.
have the camaraderie together, that they're willing to learn and listen and push themselves and share information freely and keep this intensity going.
Yeah, 100%, man. We're not like guitar players, as they say. Drummers, we all get along, man, and guitar players are a little less likely to be friends at the end of the night. So, yeah, drummers, we got a special bond.
There is this incredible family for sure.
Yeah.
But I was speaking before we went live, that there's this balance of these three areas that are so important to kind of find a balance in. There's the balance of being an artist, where we have to keep studying our craft.
Mm-hmm.
There's the balance of being a business person, that we have to, monetize and make money from our craft. As we get better at our art form, we got to keep, networking and getting word out that we're available to work.
Yep.
And the third part is the balance of our personal side, which is our family.
Yeah.
You're newly married. You're not even married a year yet, and you're now in this house. You're living down in Florida. You've got this fantastic setup here, and here you are now balancing these three areas. How do you balance all this?
Man, so first of all, I think anybody who knows me knows I have never had drums set up in any place I've lived in, because my thing was, and this is like bachelor life, right? Like as a bachelor growing up, I was like, when I go out on tour, that's work, and I want to keep that work. And when I come home, I'll keep sticks out to, do some rudiments on a pillow, but never really set up a full kit in the house. I just always had a studio somewhere that I can go to when I needed to, you know what I mean? But never consistently set up. So first of all, there's now drums in the house, man. That was part of the balance, as you can see. So it was part of the balance, because the thing is, there has to be some added weight to any proper balance. So right now, the business weight gets really light when you're talking about pandemic.
Yeah.
The creativity weight gets really light, where the family and home life weight gets really heavy, because now we have nowhere else to go. So the idea, man, has been just the balance comes from just being able to say, okay, see what's lacking, see what's missing. You know what I mean? Don't lock myself in the studio all day. Lock myself in here most of the day. And then still be able to go down and have some family time. And then, because my family lives in a different state, so, I'm making sure that I'm constantly calling them and making sure that they're safe and just checking in. So the balance, man, the idea is to see where the lack is and make the improvement. So, music lacked, and this studio wasn't here a month ago,
This goes back to your concept of adaptability and maximizing your time. I mean, this goes exactly back to what you're talking about. And let's talk about the studio for a second. So in the studio, you put the studio together in your home. And again, like you said, you really never had drums set up in where you lived, right?
Yeah, never. This is a first. And it's funny because when I first moved down here, I got a kit, and I took out the snare, because that's like the most common piece. You know what I'm saying? I took the snare out, and I took all the drums out of the boxes, and I put fresh heads on everything. And then I put them back in the box and stacked them up, because I was like, I'll take them out when I need to. And, if I did a local gig, I just take my pedal, my snare, my cymbal case, because there was always drums there.
Yeah.
So moving here, and like I said, about a month ago, once I knew that this was going to last for a second, I was like, I guess I got to go in the closet and take those drums out. So I'm like in the back of the closet, pulling all my stuff out, and it's like, all right, luckily I have fresh heads and everything. But it's literally the first time I pulled these drums out of the box and set them up and played them, and like really just finding that space of, like you said, balance, man, of like, how much time do I spend in the studio versus how much time do I spend out?
Yeah. So
it's been, this is a month in, man, and all the work done myself. It's not like I could call a contractor and have them come in. Yeah. So, had to order everything myself and take a trip to Home Depot with a mask on and get some things. And, and luckily, I've been doing some test runs and making sure my sounds are right, and everything has been coming out incredible so far.
Well, it's amazing that and I want people to really understand that it takes time to as drummers. I mean, I have a studio of my own. It's a freestanding building in back of my property. And like yourself, I put that together. I brought certain people to do certain work for me at the time when I could, but 90% about that studio was, I was in charge of making it happen. And our effort and our desire to make it happen. And we're building this facility that allows you to have that kind of, business skill that you can now go into that room and handle your business.
Yeah. It's a thing. You got to have it, man, especially in times like now. You have to have it.
So with this, so you went and you put the room together, you brought the drums in there, and was there any kind of soundproofing that you put in that you used?
Yeah, I foamed up everything, man, and the foam is funny because of the COVID-19 stuff, everything takes forever to be sent out. So when I ordered on my phone, it was like, oh, you got to wait another week. Then that week came and it was like, oh, you got to wait another week. Then it was like, all right, guys, stop playing my emotions. So finally, like anything else, man, a room has creaks and crevices that you got to cover up. So, knocked out all the corners first, saw what that did and then said, okay, let's do some wall paneling. And then, kind of followed the process the way it needed to be done. And it's funny because even now, I'm still in the process of like kind of figuring out more ways to make it sound even better. And it sounds great. I'm actually pretty happy with the sound as of today.
Yeah.
But how we are, man. We get to a place and then you record something and you say, oh, that was an inflection that I didn't hear before. And then you got to find it, and so far the room has a nice balance of live and tight. So, it's I took the time and did all the padding. I took the time and when it got some insulation board, I took the time, ordered all new speakers, all new cabling, like really took the time to get my microphone sent in from New Jersey and took the time to just say, okay, let's like look at the room's aesthetic. It's a small room, which is great. Not too big of a space that I got to like really work to figure out the little corners and things. But yeah, I just, foamed it out. Insulation board and drums and mics.
So you had sheetrock on the walls and you kind of put some foam on there and some insulation board.
Some foam on the top half of the walls. I went ahead and foamed out so that I could at least keep half the room live and half the room dead. You know what I mean? So that, because, I don't want the drums to sound like they're under a blanket. I want them to still sound as alive as possible without having to take them into an actual real studio.
Well, that's great the way you did that. I want people to really understand that you put the foam in the top so that absorbs the vibration up on top, but the lower part, which has the sheetrock, still gives a lot of feedback and a live sound back at the drum. So the mics are getting a live sound, but the overall sound of the room is being absorbed by the foam. But that's a great balance. That'll be a great sound.
Yeah, I mean, so far, like I said, I can't be more happy with what I've gotten. And I tell people, it's funny because, you talk about studio, right? And the word studio holds so much weight that it should not hold.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, I'm all about going into an actual studio space to work. But okay, once again, adaptation, maximization, we have to maximize on this time. Yeah. So it was like I could either overthink this thing and get super mental about it, or I could just say, you know what, let me try something and see if it works. And just take the common sense laws, right? Like you said, let the absorption be up top and let the live still have an ambiance around the actual drum kit. Yeah. So when I'm playing, I want people to still feel my drums. I play really good drums. And I want people to feel the drums and the shells and, their character. So, yeah, man, it's definitely coming together very nicely thus far.
Well, this is fantastic that you're doing this here because first of all, I love your sound. I've heard you play several times, Rashid, and you have a very, very clean, articulate, tight sound. And I think that's something which takes time to work on, and you really accomplished that. As a matter of fact, I enjoyed you had some Chromeo stuff that you had done where you talked about that. You talked about how to clean up. I recommend everyone go to the Chromeo YouTube channel and type in Rashid's name and watch some of this stuff here because it really was done very well, and how you spoke about the clarity of sound and the articulation of being able to really play exactly what you feel you want to play.
Yeah. That Chromeo, man, those guys at Chromeo One are incredible. Yeah. I think their setup is quite beautiful to say the least.
Yeah.
And not to mention, the lesson that we did there was important because of what you just said. it's like that sound takes so much time to create, and to be that comfortable within the sound takes so much time to create. And I think a lot of drummers get discouraged, man, on the journey, and they, because they see the finished product, they see today, they see 25 years or whatever it was of like me being some little kid trying to get my sound right, and screwing up a lot. They don't get to see those moments. So now, it's just like, oh, this guy woke up one day and started playing. And it's like, no, actually, this thing took practice. This thing took a lot of time to build accuracy, build precision, and then just getting more in touch with my body so that I know what I want to do and I know how to, give a proper depiction of that picture of what I have in my head, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, that's so great. And listen, you have worked with an amazing amount of people, aside from John Legend, Eric Robertson, Jill Scott, J. Cole, Alicia Keys. You really have allowed that your sound to be behind some great musicians that demand a lot from drummers.
Yes. One thing I must say, man, I have never worked for an artist that was not hard on the drummer.
Yeah.
I count that a blessing because it's always kept me on my toes, man. I don't think my life would be the same, if early days, the artists that I worked with to really get me my foot in the door didn't put the pressure on making sure that the patterns are right, and put the pressure on make sure the groove is right, and put the pressure on like, dude, did you listen to my music or are you just guessing right now?
Yeah.
All those things as a 18, 19-year-old are the same principles that I follow, today at age 30 some odd something. So in that regard, man, I've been so blessed to work for people that are just like, no, if anything's gonna be right, the drums gotta be the first thing to be right.
Yeah.
Even if, because I wasn't, and even now I'm not the musical director in every situation I'm in.
Yeah.
Jill Scott, I'm the musical director. John Legend, I'm not. Yeah. But even then, it's like the drums have to be right. If the drums aren't right, then the show is going to be a little weird.
Yeah.
Because, we want to see the people dance, and the drums are what starts that. So, yeah, man, it's been a complete blessing from start to finish.
Boy, it really was fantastic. I want to show you a question by Bobby Angeletta, who's a wonderful drummer in upstate New York. Are you doing any teaching, or do you plan on using the new studio, to record and that you just built? What are you going to do with that?
There will be a little bit of everything. Recording is already a possibility. I've been running some stuff and making sure that I got the sounds I want. Next on the list, yes, is teaching, but I can't say I'm going to teach like everybody else, man. I really want to just get dialogue started with drummers to more so figure out in a more direct sense what drummers need to work on and what they don't need to work on.
Right.
I have a lot of drummers who reach out to me and say, yo, man, how do I get my foot speed up? And then I'll say, okay, cool. Before I answer that question, let me look at some of your stuff and do some homework. Yeah. And I look at their stuff and their foot speed is incredible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So my response is build your confidence first because you're great. And then let's talk about, how to maintain your foot speed. Maybe.
Yeah.
So everything is in the line right now to be done. Like I said, lessons may be in the next 2 weeks.
Good for you.
I'll have the cameras up to do that. But man, the plan is to utilize this space and maximize on every single inch of it.
Fantastic. Talk about your drums. You've been with Mapex now since 2006.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that, we had a 30th anniversary in Nashville last year, and you came down to that and we hung out. It was just so great. Russ Miller was there. Kurt Covington was there. Ralph Peterson was there. So many great drummers that were there that we just had to hang out. And we all ended up playing and talking, and it was just a great thing. Is that a Saturn V that you have back there?
This is a Saturn V. My favorite snare is the Equinox. Like I breathe by that snare.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's a Saturn V. I believe it's the Deep Water Burst shell.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful finish. But these are the maple walnut hybrid shells. Man, I can't say enough great things about these drums. Since I started playing Mapex, which was now about 16 or 17 years ago.
Yeah.
The shells are the shells that talk to me most.
Mm.
That maple walnut combination is probably one of the most beautiful works of combination shell
real
that I've ever seen. You know what I'm saying? They're smooth, they're precise, they punch, but just not too much. They got warmth.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, man. So of course they were the obvious choice for any drum set. That, like I said, these drums were initially meant for local gigging, but studio wise, I would play these drums as well.
Yeah.
Because they have so much diversity built into them naturally.
Yeah.
You know, put them under mics and it's just, man, they sing. So, yep, Saturn 5, typical setup at home, man, enough to record and to teach and to just get some beautiful sounds.
Well, good for you, man. You know, it's interesting about the Saturn 5. These are very, very thin shells.
Yeah.
And because of that walnut and maple combination, it's able to be a thin shell, but have strength to it because of the way that they layer the wood. It really is a brilliant sound. And what's interesting is that at the NAMM show, I heard the new, birch one, wood that they have. And so now they're going to have the Saturn in both birch and maple, which opens up a whole nother degree of sound that I think is going to be absolutely fantastic. Talk about the design lab. You play also the design lab when you're on the road, right?
Yeah, so my design lab kit is actually in Philly in cases. And what month are we in? We're in May. I was supposed to be seeing them in June for rehearsals, which clearly isn't happening now.
Yeah.
Design lab kits, man, are special. And I'll tell you something. They're special for a few reasons, some personal and some just obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Personal reason why those drums are so special is because those drums were the manifestation of conversations that Russ Miller and Joe Hibbs had before Joe passed away. Those drums were drums that were, Russ really is an amazing engineer, man. And when I say engineer, I'm not talking about studio controls. I'm talking about like building things.
Yeah.
He's really good at what he does, and he's really knowledgeable and able to say, hey guys, listen, this is what we should do to improve this. And this is what we should do to improve this. And maybe if we did this, we'll get this result. And that was something that him and Joe Hibbs, before Joe passed, was like really passionate about, getting done. So that's the personal approach with those drums. Just the general approach with those drums is that right when you think, and I say this often, and it kills me that people don't pay attention to these things, but when you have a true connection to something, being my drums, I have an extreme connection to these drums. I always felt like the shell combination spoke to me most.
Yeah. You
think it can't get any better, and then all of a sudden, like, you get the phone call, hey, Rashid, we got these new drum designs that we want to try out. Why don't you come check them out? And I said, okay, cool, whatever. I'll come check them out, but I'm telling you now, I'm going to want to play the Saturn forever. And then they put you in the room and they say, all right, these are the new drums. Check them out. And when I tell you, man, I literally, like, we A and B'd it, a design lab kit to a Saturn kit. So we could really feel the differences and the nuances. And that design lab kit, man, in the level of just speaking and articulation when you're playing these drums, man, it is unmatched. It is the follow through that you feel when you hit one of those drums is unmatched. And I think that, really putting down the facts, something Russ talks about, and me and him had a great conversation about it because I wasn't as aware, and he was saying, not every drum diameter goes well with every drum depth.
Right.
So, really studying what depth goes best with what diameter. You got to 12-inch time is the hardest time for every drummer to tune.
Yeah.
To break that down and be able to say, well, that's because the depth has been wrong all these years, and correct that, to not have to fight against that little piece of adversity is a beautiful thing. So those drums, man, they are something special. My drums actually, I only have, my kicks are Versailles kicks, and all of my toms are cherry bomb toms. So, I got the punchy kicks and the warm toms.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, I mean, anybody that's seen any of my stuff online, the Chromeo clip, everybody says, oh my God, the drum sounds so good. The engineer was so good. And I'm like, I got to bust the bubble just a little bit. The engineer did a great job, but the drums, carry that weight, man. And I remember going in there and like we set everything up, and the engineer's like, "Oh man, just play. You know, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna get some stuff dialed in." And I played, and he came back, and I was like, "Oh, what's wrong? You know, you need me to change something?" And he's like, "No, I just had to see if they sounded as good in this room as they do in the booth." So, you know, and I went in and, you know, we're all studio guys, so I'm able to see what he's doing. And I went in there and I was like, "Oh man, you're not really putting much on these drums." He was like, "No, man, like your drums speak for themselves."
Yeah.
And, you know, even further to say, Russ Miller also did Chromeo. And the fact that, you know, outside of the fact that I think he played all Versailles times, you know, his character, his drum set character, and my drum set character, two very different things.
Yeah.
Where both of those kits sounded incredible, which speaks to the tuning range, the personality. I mean, like I said, the Design Lab kits are just something that's just out of this world special.
It's kind of amazing because it's, again, out of the crazy mind of Russ Miller, who's got this, you know, he's got skills as a mechanical designer and an engineer. So he's got that part of him, and he put that together. And again, the analyzation of each tom might need a different, you know, sense of structure on how the shell is made, a certain depth for that size. And it really is kind of like some real forward motion of what I call 21st century thinking, you know, for the modern drum set.
Yeah, 110%. I mean, even down to, you know, the shell and the how many plies are on each drum. You know, as the drums get bigger, the plies get thicker. I think that, you know, because I love thunderous floor times, that's always been a major thing for me. I think that in and of itself is like a major touch that, like I said, took something that was really, really, really good and just made it better.
Yeah.
And, you know, gives all of us drummers another outlet to, you know, express our creativity and to have something else that says, "Hey, listen, if you thought you could articulate completely on this one thing, hey, try this other thing."
Yeah.
Because that actually might bring your articulation to a new level.
It's pretty amazing. It really is amazing. I got a question here from Frank Perry. Frank Perry is a phenomenal player and teacher, and he plays a drum set. He's a deep Mapex artist, and he plays a drum set that he calls ambisymmetrical. This is his term, ambisymmetrical. And what it is it's kind of like this, you know, you sit down with the kid, and he uses the, you know, the ability of being able to have right and left side of the drum set where he can play righty or lefty, ambisymmetrical back and forth. Nice. And it's a young drummer by the name of Nick Cubis, who's another phenomenal drummer, who's also now adapting that also with his playing. And he's doing that too, this ambisymmetrical mentality. But Frank's asking, talk about the responsibilities and the difficulties being the MD and being a drummer. What does that take to have those two responsibilities?
You know what? Great question, first of all. Second of all, there's a few things that comes into play that I learned. And I'll tell you about the first conversation I had with Jill Scott when she asked me to be her musical director. She said to me, she said, "Hey, you know, I'd love for you to jump in as musical director. I know you already have been somewhat taking some of these responsibilities." And I said, "You know, of course, I got you. Let's do this." She said to me, "But the thing is, I want to gain a musical director, but I don't want to lose a drummer." And that to me was the biggest statement to that moment, because my thing was, okay, I have to take on all the MD responsibilities, but I can't not focus on still being the drummer on the gig.
Right.
So, you know, we had that conversation, and from that moment forward, that's been my mentality. First and foremost, be the MD, but don't stop being the drummer.
Yeah.
Like, you still have to be the drummer and lead the band, you know, without one or the other taking a hit or taking a loss.
Right, right.
That was the first mentality. After that, I figured out what worked for me, man. And, you know, a lot of musical directors have what we call talkback microphones, where they can talk to the band if you guys are on in-ears, or drummers have to come up with hand signals to, you know, give cues and whatnot.
Right, right.
I did both. You know, I came up with hand signals. I came up with cues that I can give to the band that everybody understood.
Yeah.
I also had a talkback microphone that I had to maneuver my feet to switch on and off, because you don't want to open mic by a drum set.
Yeah.
So that was the next step. After that, man, I think every musical director has to have a mentality at which they choose to move forward. Philosophy, so to speak. My philosophy was keep the music at the forefront. Like no matter what, stay true to the music.
Right.
So at that point, I dug into everything. Like literally everything. I knew every synth sound. I knew the key to every song. I knew every vocal part. I knew when the background vocals came in and out. I knew not only the drum loops, but in the patterns, but I knew the bass parts. I knew the guitar parts. And I really immersed myself in her music for the gig. Mm-hmm. And at that point, everything else was just about being able to pick the right band members. You know what I'm saying? And me and Jill have a really great system. We talk about band members all the time. She calls me and I call her and we chat it up. And, you know, we make sure that the vibe is right, first and foremost. And then we make sure that these guys can express themselves, which luckily the musicians that we're surrounded by are all incredible people. So after that, it was just, you know, finding guys that we knew would be great for the gig. And I've been blessed to have, when I tell you, man, I got some of the greatest guys making me look good on a nightly basis. It's an extreme blessing. So, yeah, man, it was the most difficult part of it was probably figuring out how to still be the drummer, but take on this whole other level of responsibility without one getting lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
The responsibility is simple. You know, anything musical comes back to me. It's like a football coach.
Yeah.
When you lose the game, they're going to talk about you. When you win the game, they probably won't even know your name. You have to be okay with that because, like I said, my philosophy and my way of going at it was the music is always first. So if nobody ever says Rashid did a great job, that was my concern. My concern was when people left the show that they say, yo, the music was on point. I felt a connection to the album cuts that I listened to in my car every day. You know, so, man, I took it one step at a time. And I made mistakes along the way. Thank God I had people around me that were like, oh, that's not really the right way to do that. And, you know, I was able to step back and correct some things.
Yeah.
Overall, man, like I said, that would be the hardest, most difficult part. And that would be the heaviest responsibility part. So.
Well, a great question, Frank. Really a great question. I think what's amazing about it is that you're realizing that there has to be a level of trust, like with yourself and Jill. And once that trust is there and that respect is there, then there's a good give and take back and forth on how you can let her know the needs that you need, whether it's what you need in your ears, what you need. You can really request exactly what you need because you have that level of communication. That's really, really great.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a thing. And I think sometimes people underestimate the ability to be able to tell, because not a lot of people want to tell the artist when they don't agree with something.
Right.
You know, it's a difference in just being a yes man that, you know, just yes to everything. And, you know, if anybody knows the artists come up with some ideas that sometimes are just like, yeah, that's a great idea, but that's a $2 million idea. You know what I mean? and we don't have the stage size. We don't have the video walls for that. We don't have the props for that. Or we just don't have the time. And Jill is an artist who we don't run any backing tracks on her stage.
Nice.
Her stage is completely live.
Wow, that's
meaning
nice.
That when she wants to stop a song, she gives me a cue and we stop.
Wow.
We don't have to hit the space bar for anything. And that is, you know, a huge testament, one, to her musicality and the fact that she's able to function that way. And two, to this amazing band that she always has behind her.
Yeah.
Because these guys are able to just flow. And I mean, Dom, I'll tell this quick story and I'm gonna shut up about this. We're in DC a few years back. We're in DC and we played at the MGM 2 nights in a row. And these shows were getting good, man. I mean, like, they were getting good. The vibe was there. DC is always a great crowd. So the second night, it was the last night of tour, and it was the second night that we played DC. The end of the show comes, and at this point, we're literally having a jam session on stage. And Jill says in the microphone, she says, please cut all the lights out in the house. And the lighting guy is, of course, he's going to follow the boss, cut all the lights out. So now we're playing in a pitch black room where all you can see is exit signs. Live from the yacht, this went on for about 12 to 15 minutes. Just nonstop. Jill is doing poetry. She's singing. The band is jamming. They cut the lights back on. Everybody was still in the exact same place that they were when she said cut the lights out. And the show had already ended. Like we did the last song. We came in an encore, and this was like the encore to the encore. You know, people didn't have to stay, man, but they appreciated that live element. That was like, these guys literally are just flowing and just enjoying the natural push and energy of the music. So, and talk about special times, man. That stage is one of the most incredible stages I've ever played.
Yeah, that's a beautiful stage, and the sound in there is also excellent too. In that, sure. You know, it's amazing that you know, this is why live music is such an important part of people's lives. And this is why, although we have this challenge with the pandemic and everything is kind of stopped for a while, it's going to come back, and it could even come back even bigger. You know, that's where the next level is. I got a question here from Eugene Man Roberts. Explain the approach to the Chromeo gig.
So first of all, what up, Man? So Man is Chromeo's musical director.
Yeah.
And Legend's musical director. So I'm glad he stopped by. But talk about Chromeo. So Chromeo was a very, very, very different kind of gig. We got into Chromeo to do Tiny Desk, which anybody that knows Tiny Desk knows is very low volume. Like, and mind you, we're rehearsing at full volume. So it was a whole different thing. But Chromeo is like a funk band. Like, they are really like stone cold locking these grooves, man. So it's funny because the one thing they paid attention to is the one thing I didn't think they would pay attention to, which was the hi-hat patterns. They were really big on hi-hat patterns.
Nice.
So, you know, first step, me and Man, we always get together before any other band member gets in the room, so to speak. And we talk about everything. We talk about what trigger sounds I'm playing. We talk about what samples we need. We talk about how many clicks come in before track music. We talk like, we literally have a powwow.
Nice.
Like, this is what we're going to do. I know my job. He knows what he wants from me, and I know what he wants from me. And it's my job to execute.
Yeah.
So, you know, we got in the room. We did that first. Once we started digging into this stuff, I found out that, one, I had to do hybrid playing for this because they have specific sounds. These guys produce their own music.
Yeah.
Well, they had specific kick drum sounds, specific snare sounds, specific auxiliary sounds that needed to be played, but also needed to be played with the human feel.
Yeah.
So, you know, hybrid drumming was the next thing. We got all the rolling electronics, and those guys are great with drum electronics. And we took the approach. Once we did that, it was just about locking it in, man, and really, really, really breaking down the patterns, really breaking down the kicks, the snares, the hi-hats, the inflections of all those things.
Yeah.
Saying, like, what was the proper touch on one song may not have been the proper touch on the next song. We had to really dig into that aspect of it. Once we got in the room with the artists and those guys came in, like I said, they were like, you're playing everything right.
Yeah.
But the hi-hat, the Andy is too hard. You know what I'm saying? So literally, I had to go back and I was like, oh man, okay, because he was right. He wasn't lying. He produced it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I went back and me and Man, we laugh about it all the time. But I went back and really dug into some of this stuff, man. And the approach became really, really attacking what these guys produced because they spent their time on this. They know this thing in and out, and their fans are going to want to hear it. So at that point, talk about revamping the way you approach a drum kit. Man, it was certain songs where I was like, where I normally lead off with my right hand, I can't do that now. Got to lead off with my left hand. Because the way they want to hear this rhythm played, it can't be dominant on my right. It has to be dominant on my left. Dominant on my left in order for it to sit right groove-wise. So the approach was like really, really, really heavily stated in getting in touch with the music that they produced and getting in touch with my MD so that we could properly give the correct depiction of this music. And when we started doing live shows, totally honest, man, that the energy that we felt from their fans is something that is unmatched. Like, their fans know their music.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, to hear a fan say, "Oh my God, you played that right," it's like, wow. You know, that all started with that overall approach of, let's seriously dig into this music, and even the small little details that nobody else is really paying attention to, let's make sure we get that too.
It pays off because the Chromeo pocket is so deep. It's so fun. Absolutely. Thank you, man. Great question. So tell me about, Russ Miller joined us on here too. And we had just talked about him, about the design lab and the sounds that you're using. So here you're on stage, you're playing with all these different acts, and your Mapex is the common denominator that's there to kind of help you to kind of get that kind of sound that you need. So whatever you have to change and adapt. And of course, with the design lab that we talked about, I mean, magnets and the adjustments of the floating, device of what's happening out of the mind of Russ Miller. My gosh, this is like, a whole nother level of 21st century drumming. And I ask everyone to do the research and go to designlab.com. Some really interesting stuff that is there to do the research as far as the product and what the level of it is at. Sure. But I want you to talk about you got some relatives that are also involved with drums, and I believe Trey Chen is also now a Mapex artist. So tell me about Trey and Hakeem, these guys that are now this next generation.
So Trey's a Mapex artist. Trey, actually, me and Trey grew up together in ways that people just don't understand. When I say that, I say that because you want to talk about broke young drummers. We were the epitome of broke young drummers, man. So me and Trey often laugh because we had one cymbal bag that we shared. And, people say, well, what happens? And I mean, this cymbal, it was combined of some of my cymbals, well, all of my cymbals and all of his. But so combined, we had one full set of a kit, a couple crashes, a ride, hi-hats, a china, all these things. So people say, well, what did you do when you had 2 gigs on the same night? It was like, we man, rock, paper, scissors, we fighting. It's like, all right, so who gets to take the ride versus who gets to take the hi-hat?
That's hysterical.
But we have so much history. So I was so happy, man, when we got older and we both started touring, and Trey was touring with Estelle. We actually got to tour together, which was beautiful.
Yeah.
He was touring with Estelle, and Estelle was on the same bill as John for a whole entire tour. And, to be able to tour with family was something that is still to this day one of the most amazing feelings in the world. Yeah. So, Trey's been a Mapex artist for years, man, and now he's touring with Pink Sweat, John B, and, they're doing all these home concerts. And, man, I always make sure I check them out. So Trey's incredible. We have so much beautiful history that it just really shows that family ties is one thing, but drummer bond is a whole thing, man.
Those two together are pretty powerful, man. Tell me about Hakeem. What's he doing?
So Hakeem he's my very reluctant to admit how good he is cousin. And I say that because, so it's funny, I just found a video of me and Hakeem. This had to be, man, talk about maybe 5-6 years ago.
Wow.
At my parents' church, and we're on 2 kits, and we're just like going back and forth, and it was really cool to see. So Hakeem, Hakeem was one of those guys that I remember when I first started like getting out into music as a teenager, and I was doing a lot of gospel gigs, man. And it's like I left church, that particular church, because my dad started pastoring. So the church I grew up in, we started going to my dad's church. Hakeem was at the church I grew up in. So it's like I left to go to my dad's church for like a year. And I come back, we went to go visit the old church. And before I could even get in the door, I hear the drums. And I'm like, yo, who they got as a drummer? Who's playing drums? I was like, whoever that is amazing. And, like I said, I'm a teenager. Like, I don't know nothing. And I walk in, and it's my little cousin. And I'm like, oh man, like literally my first cousin is turning into this incredible drummer. So fast forward to now, man, I mean, he has a family. He's doing great for himself. But I ask him all the time, man, why don't you go on the road? He's like, nah, man, I'm good with my church gigs. So he plays at, I think, 2 different churches, actually. And you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it gives a lot of weight to the idea that like you can literally choose what you want to be in this business.
Yeah.
You know, for me it was I just want to get on the road. For him it was, hey man, I just like having my drums in my garage and I like playing at my church.
Yeah.
And that's just what I choose to do. And he's incredible, man. He's one of my favorite drummers, to be totally honest.
But there really is beauty in that, you know, Rashid, that we have our drummer bond that we have worldwide really, really never ceases to amaze me with the students that I have worldwide and just the great, great drummers that I get to, you know, meet, you know, globally, which is so exciting. You know, we had a question here from Maxim Dioman. Maxim Dioman is a wonderful, wonderful drummer that's in Kiev, Ukraine. And he's a phenomenal player. I actually interviewed him just a few days last week. And he's a great, great educator as he is a great, great player. But yes, Rashid, do you remember that moment when you felt like you wanted to play the drums? What was that beginning stage that kind of, where was that moment of realization that you said, this is what I'm going to do?
So I'll give him three moments. Let's say 3 moments.
Yeah.
3 monumental points that led to today. And they were all before the age of 13. So one moment was as a kid in church, always feeling the pull of the drum kit.
Yeah.
That's probably stage number 1. And both my parents were drummers, mind you, my mom and my dad.
Wow.
So I got a chance and a lot of my family members played instruments. So naturally feeling like, all right, I want to be a drummer. I want to play some drums. So that's stage 1. Stage 2, and this is embarrassing. I'm telling all my business. Being a kid growing up, man, my dad always had instruments around, and I had a drum set, a little, you know, it wasn't the greatest kit in the world at all. You know, it was one of my very few drum kits I had as a child. And I was going on tour, man, in our garage because I literally would like set my drums up in one corner of the room and I would practice, and then break everything down, put them in cases, and then walk across the room all of 15 feet. Set them up. And in my mind, this was my way of doing what I love to do. And that's really prepared me mentally. Yeah. It's like, this is something I really want to do. Like, I really want to get out of my garage, though. I want to take a plane to do this. So that was stage 2. And that was when like I really started building a devotion to this thing. Stage 3 was that Janet Jackson Velvet Rope tour. That HBO special, I remember the day I was like 12, being a kid and sitting down. And I feel like I might have started watching it just for Janet Jackson, because who doesn't want to watch Janet Jackson? But one, I noticed immediately that it was Little John Roberts on drums. And this was the guy that I had heard about, you know, like just in going to church, and like people were like, oh yeah, Little John from Philly. I heard about this guy. And then to be sitting there and listening to him play these patterns and these grooves and executing this music, I mean, like flawlessly. Yeah. Legit flawlessly, man. Like executing like nobody's ever heard it. And I will go out on a limb and say nobody's ever played it like that since. It's been played great, but never like that. And that was when I said, okay, I want to do that. I want to play in arenas and in huge venues in front of so many people. And I want my drums to be what makes people dance. And that was at age 12. So those were like the 3 major points that were like, this is how you know you want to do it. And that Janet Jackson thing was the icing on the cake. And I still carry that with me to this day, because every time I'm sitting in a major venue, I'm sitting in an arena looking around and I'm like, oh my goodness, this started, I saw Little John do this and this is what made me want to do it. You know what I mean? And it's incredible to think about the fact that he's even a friend of mine now. Like, that's like big brother to me now. So yeah, man, those were the stages, the 3 main stages of like, I want to play drums. This is what I'm going to do.
Well, it's pretty amazing when you think about, you know, breaking your drums down and moving them to a different side of the room. You were kind of visualizing this traveling and this setting up. And I mean, that was really, you were planting the seed of really what would eventually become your truth.
Man, I was manifesting that thing, Dom. You couldn't tell me. I was like, this is it. This is London. You can't tell me this isn't London. Over there, Japan, you can't tell me it's not Japan. And man, and you know what? But it was a thing because, you know, I tell people, and we joke around about stuff, but it's like, listen, if you really want something, you got to manifest that thing. You got to believe more than anybody else believes that it's actually going to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I had to be the one to start that hunger because nobody else was going to do it for me.
Yeah.
Other people could encourage me, but to actually accomplish it, yeah, that was up to me. So yeah, it started way back then.
But I'll tell you something, having your parents influential with music and you being involved with the church, I mean, that was really a good start and a good beginning to kind of get you involved in playing good music with a higher cause. You know, here you are performing in church with these people, spiritually, you know, putting all this together. That's a pretty powerful momentum.
Well, yeah, and I always say church musicians have a bit more of an advantage because of that. I think that, you know, we grow up and in church, we call it the spirit, right? We call it Christianity. That's the thing, or whatever it is that, you know, whoever you worship, that's what you're doing in church. And it does connect us with the spiritual realm that is necessary when you get to the major gigs. I mean, whether it's jazz, whether it's funk, whether it's pop, R&B, whatever it is, there is a spiritual level that the band reaches. You know what I'm saying? You can't tell me that watching Elvin Jones, like that dude didn't levitate on a set of drums, man. Yeah. Like this cat, to watch him play, he tapped into something different.
Oh, yeah, it was deep, very deep.
And it's like I looked at a clip of Thomas Pridgeon that Gerald Hayward posted on Instagram.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I saw the clip and then Man sent me the clip again and was like, this is crazy. So I'm looking at the clip and like, you can't tell me that Thomas Pridgeon didn't tap into something else.
Oh, yeah. Thomas.
Playing, like, to watch him play is spirit. It becomes spiritual at some point, you know? And I think that's what people actually feel more than anything. That transfer of energy when any musician, keyboards, bass, you know what I mean? When we sit at our instruments, transferring that energy is so important. And I think that's what church did for most of us guys that grew up in church. It prepared us and taught us how to transfer that energy that we call the spirit. You know what I mean? It was like how to transfer that energy so that the people feel every single thing you're doing. So yeah, man, it was an incredible start.
Boy, that's very, very powerful. And Thomas, who I've known very well, I've known Thomas when he was a young boy coming over to the NAMM show, and his grandmother would bring him by, and I met her. She was a sweet person that she was. And Thomas, myself, and Virgil Donati played a tour together throughout Australia for Frank Corniola, who puts on the Australia Ultimate Drummers Weekend, which is a phenomenal show. And we did like 7 cities in 8 days. And to witness Thomas, I'd go on, I'd open up my thing, and then Thomas would come out, then Virgil would come out, then we'd play together. And there's footage on YouTube of us playing together. Thomas always came out and approached the drums like it was a whole first-time event that he was coming into, and just tore it up. And really, there's something bigger there that goes on. But you had that too. When I saw you perform just recently, this last year at the 30th anniversary for Mapex, you sat behind the kit and you already immediately just laid a groove down that just brought everybody in to the pocket. Which was like it's like you hugged everybody. You brought us all in. Your groove was clean. It was fun. It was relaxed, and you laid it down. And then when other drummers joined in, you knew just how to lay back, give them their time, and then when the time was done, you knew how to bring it back and come back to the fold. So you have a great natural ear of welcoming people musically. That's rare. I
appreciate that, man, because that's the goal. It's like I often say, man, if you're in the room, right, and let's say that I only speak English, and I'm in the room with all people that speak English, we should have conversation. That should not be a quiet space. Yeah. And if you're in the room and say you speak Spanish and I speak English, we can still communicate. We should be teaching each other how to communicate better.
Right.
And I think music is that way. I think sometimes drummers, you know, they say, well, I do this and you do that. We're not the same. And it's like, no, we can still have a conversation though.
Yeah.
Like we can still, you know, show each other what exactly it is that I look for when I'm sitting behind the kit, and what is it that you look for when you sit behind the kit. Right. And that moment, man, I remember that night so vividly because at one point I remember saying to everybody, I was like, all right, stop. And I looked at, I felt like it was one of the guys from Tennessee. I feel like it was Rob maybe. But I looked at him and I'm like, yo, I said, all right, just talk to us for a second. Nobody else plays. Just give him a minute. And we started doing that for each drummer, man. And it was like, wow.
Great.
These guys all have a different language. They all have a different personality. And when I tell you, man, that was a special day, and on so many levels.
Yeah.
The day was just special. But in particular, that moment, I was like, yeah, this is something that we have to continue as drummers, because spiritually, like I said, we each have our thing. We have to be able to convey that and be willing to share that with each other.
Yeah. That's pretty powerful. But that's also what I'm so honored that Mapex does. They allow us, they bring us together. They make great product. It's a great company. They really kind of allow us to kind of, they fuel our wings to get out there and do what we do. And the drums are consistently out of the box. They always sound great no matter where I am around the world. I take a kid out, I set them up. They sound great. They're easy to tune, and they really are extremely affordable. So I mean, they really have found a great combination of making great product and supporting education and players around the world. That really is a fantastic philosophy that Mapex has.
100%. I couldn't have said that better.
Yeah, pretty powerful. I'll tell you something, Rashid. This is great to have some time with you. You really are incredibly special at what you do. Thank you so much. I wish you good luck with the studio, with what you're doing. Get back in the row when the time is right, for sure, man. But keep on going. And if you do some lessons, anyone that's out there that wants to do some lessons, get a hold of me. I'll connect you with Rashid, man. Just even if you sit down and just do some coaching and evaluate people from your studio, that would be very, very helpful while drummers have the time to be able to tap into you. Because once you're on the road, you're gone, man.
I'm gone. But yeah, now is definitely the time to get me. I got nothing but time on my hands.
I love it, man. Well, I tell you something. Well, congratulations to the newlywed that you are. You're not even married a year yet, so your wonderful wife has got to be an incredible angel and a saint. So you wish her the best from me. Thank you, Rashid, so much on behalf of Mapex and Mapex's educational program. You are fantastic. Safe travels to all the guys that joined us. Thank you so much, Carlos Goodspan. My gosh, he's here from Miami. Stephanie Williams. My gosh, look at this here. Look at these people in here. Scott Kane.
Stephanie Williams is the missus.
What's her message? Let me see what her message is. Is there a musical lesson that you could share that motivates you or keeps you grounded as a musician? Is there a musical lesson that you could share that motivates you and keeps you grounded as a musician? Ooh, that's a good one.
Man, she didn't warn me that she was going to ask that question.
Deep.
Oh, man. Musical lesson that I could share that motivates me and keeps me grounded. That lesson would have to be everything I've ever heard that actually touched me in some place. And when I say that, I'll give an example of James Brown. When you listen to a James Brown record, it's nothing like hearing him say, "Hit me," and you hear that snare clap down. And you hear the band and you hear the horns and you hear the cohesive thing that they have going on.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest lesson any musician could ever have.
Yeah.
Now, the motivation is that we have to uphold that torch. We, as today's musicians, we have a responsibility to legitimately be as great as the guys that came before us. If we can't do that, then our job is pointless here. We might as well hang it up, put the sticks down, don't do it anymore. That we actually are willing to carry that torch. So when I say everything I've ever heard as motivation, it's insane, because when you see the need in the musical culture today, on all levels, rock music, R&B music, gospel music, all music there's a need for it right now. And for it to remain honest as James Brown was when he screamed on the track for no reason.
Absolutely.
Like, he screamed on Payback 1 billion times, and nobody really knows why, but it was perfect for him. And it was so honest. So I think the motivation is just that, man, when you hear that and it's so necessary, it makes you want to just keep that ball rolling. Yeah. So, yeah, everything I've ever heard that touched me in some way is a musical lesson. And the motivation is to keep the torch lit, man. Got to keep the torch.
Fantastic, Rashid. Thank you. And Stephanie, thank you so much for a great question. What a beautiful person. That's fantastic. And that says it all right there, to keep ourselves open to taking all these ideas from past drummers that are doing things that are right now. Keep it all in, take it all in, and become the constant student to learn this art form.
100%. That's the only thing we can do. Be students every day, keep learning.
You are doing that well, Rashid. On behalf of Mapex, we thank you so much. Stay well, safe travels. I look forward to seeing you on the road soon for sure.
Same to you, Don. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much, guys. Thank you, Mapex. Bye-bye.
All right.